poets are all like earthworms. We actually give what the earth lacks. I mean, people take what the earth has, and earthworm actually, it nourishes the earth and it gives that nourishment back. I mean, maybe in some some plants does it. The roots of some plant does it, like give nitrogen and something back to the earth. I think poets are doing that. Thank you for inviting me here, Ardi. And I don't know whether to call Anaha or Anvithi, because from now onwards, in the world of literature, she is Anaha. I'm standing here with great happiness because a young writer is now has stepped on to the platform of literature, and it is a happy moment in the life of everyone too, that like you have been there as a presence to welcome a young writer to literature. I'm so happy, Anaha, and all those who invited me here. And while going through her poems, I got this book a couple of weeks back. Thank you, Anaha. Actually, usually people send it in the last minute and we won't get the opportunity to read the book. And I mean, the whole thing has been, perfectly organized. I'm so happy about that. And while reading this book, I felt that like I'm straight away coming to the point. Actually, there is a kind of deeper loneliness in these poems that I felt. And long before, I wrote one line, loneliness will give you infinity. And after reading this book, I felt that that line was, I mean, actually it had some other reflections as well, because when you are alone, and I think the word alone and lonely are slightly different, and solitude is a little different, but like all together has, I mean, some common point to say. And when you are alone, you'll get multiple doors to open, and you'll get multiple dimensions to travel. And I think here we have Anaha, and she has traveled. She has opened one of the doors of loneliness, and she started traveling through those. I don't know where she will reach, but she has started her travel, and we cannot predict the trajectory of that arrow straight away right now. But yeah, of course, it's a beautiful thing. As a human being, we see and experience that because we have once went through that trajectory. And now we are seeing a young person who is, as Sir rightly said, she's just 22 and she has chosen poetry. That's really important. I mean, we can choose many ways for our escape, and she has chosen poetry and words. And I think that is really, really important. And in Malayalam, there is saying kind of poems. Actually, it's not a saying. It's written by Kumaranashan, but after some time, certain poems will become as a saying, right? Like, Tannadilla paranullu kaattuvan unnume naranupayam Ishwaran, which means that the God hasn't given a proper way for a human being to express their own emotions, their own heart. The Tannadilla paranullu kaattuvan unnume naranupayam Ishwaran. Innu bhashai daburnam. Today, like the language is inappropriate to express your emotion. There are more other than, above the language to, like, as an what is called, you cannot express all your emotions through language. I think these poems has that quality. She has said certain things, but there are more things actually. Like after you read these poems, you can see that there is a vacuum. And slowly these words from these poems come in and fill that vacuum. And you see that idea of vacuum is getting more and more, so that we as readers can have a tendency to fill that vacuum with our own words and feelings, because it is automatically come as our poems. So that is how these poems work, I guess. And I think this is the basic thing of about, like, I don't know whether it is this story is here in Karnataka, because I think it's everywhere. This Ramayana story that the Valmiki went to the forest and then he has seen two birds. Yeah, that it's everywhere. So that's the basic essence of, I think, poetry, that he has seen two. A hunter is hunting two birds, and then one of the birds, two birds, two lovers, and then like one bird has been hunted by a hunter, and then automatically this word comes in, like manishada, like to stop, that manishada. I think the words come first than poetry, than like the thought. In the same way, I think in these poems, the thought, or like what should I speak, that the very thought, no, what should I speak, comes later, and the words comes first. And that is the gap between the idea that we wanted to express and what we say. Like he wanted to say a lot of things. This poet wanted to say a lot of things to the hunter, like to stop. But he doesn't say that. Like that's what, it's an utterance. And this utterance come as an emotion. And that's exactly what the essence of human experience means and human memory means. And that's what exactly Shiprakash sir said about memory, the idea of memory in the poems. It's about that word later come as a memory. And the memory, the idea of memory in these poems are really profound, as well as like really so evident, actually. Memory of childhood, memory of birds chirping. In the first poem itself, like I can see a lot of, many poems, and memory of wounds, memory of being alone in the crowd. It's all connected to memory, the idea of memory. I'll read one poem from maybe the first poem. It's called Black Studded Hat. As I walked down the road, full of people I know, my eyes hidden behind my black studded hat, trying to blink away the tears that are trying to take control. A drop slowly slides down my cheek as I quickly wipe it away. Fake smile on these lips of mine that just wants to shout shout and let out the painful thing buried deep within, which wound the scars of mine in the same spot over and over again. My friends don't notice, as they think I am in a hurry. I don't want to see the people I love or those who love me in return, because I know if I do, there is nothing I can do to stop my eyes from taking control and showing how hurt I truly am. Yeah, this poem showcases exactly like what pain is inside. You can actually see, like if I were an AI, I would have said how many times the idea of the term wound comes in these poems. I think the word wound is a recurring image in this poem. The idea of pain is a recurring image in these poems. So I see a lot of, such imageries, pain, which means that it's connected with memory, and wound. Yes, of course, connected with memory, the childhood memories of classroom and bird chirping and many other things, being alone in the crowd. It doesn't come as in a modernist poem, actually. It doesn't have that philosophical hold, like, alone in the crowd or alone in the city, not like Eliot does it. But as a modern writer, like very personal, alone in the crowd, very personal, maybe in Bangalore or in her own home, alone in the crowd. I mean, not in that modernist sense, but in a very contemporary sense. Like she has this idea of now in her poetry, I guess, in her poems. Yeah. So the problem with language of poetry is that language always try to conceal certain things, conceal certain ideas, especially when it is connected with poetry. Language has a tendency to conceal. And that's why we always say language is arbitrary, or we say it is suggestiveness, or we say it is like ambiguity. We use the term ambiguity because there is always a kind of language has a tendency to conceal certain direct meanings. And in poetry, it is very evident. And in her language, it is not opaque. Actually, the light comes in her poetry. And so I really wanted to place her as a poet of, I would use the word translucent, because through her poems, I could see light comes in. I could actually see through, but it is not opaque as well as not transparent. Actually, light comes in and we realize that we know certain things, we can see it. Then at the moment, the poems will say that it is not what you meant. Initially, when I thought, okay, it's about a lover, maybe it could be about God. It could be about anything and everything. So it has multiple layers slowly. It moves from one meaning to the next. So I think these poems are translucent poems, which opens up a kind of new readings again and again. Apart from the fact that she's 22. Let us forget that she's 22. Let's think that she's 62 or 72 or 82. Then I think these poems will, many. Let's just focus on the idea of text, and then like it is not just a lover. It could be God or many. It could be nature, and it has the poem has a tendency to move from one layer to the next, and then slowly the poetry start revealing things. Actually, I wanted to use the word unconceal in Martin Heidegger's idea. I mean, language is unconcealing certain ideas. And I think that's really important in poetry. And only poetry can do that. Like, actually, in poems, language just moves into the idea of nature and idea of truth. And that's exactly poetry differs from novel and any other genre. It is more close to the idea of truth. Poetry is very much close to the idea of truth and this idea of madness, because it speaks from within and it actually touches nature so closely. Maybe if you are writing a novel, you may feel that you wanted to communicate with the audience. In poetry, you doesn't have to. You are speaking in a deeper language, and also readers are reading in a different language of their own. So no one can ever say that they understood poetry or they could actually got the idea of poetry. And that's the beauty of that genre, I believe. And her poems are, I think, closer to the idea of nature, idea of madness, and idea of the childishness of language, as well as the maturity of language. That is how it works, I guess. So I think her poems are revealing or unconcealing the idea of nature, and at the same time reality, and also idea of memory. And her memory, the idea of memory in her poems are not past memory. I don't know whether there is something called, people always say that there is, we say past and memory, we always connect past and memory. In fact, it is not. I think the idea of memory is always in the present, because we tend to think or like memorize things maybe in the past. It happens maybe in the past, but like we are deciphering this memory in the present. It happens only in the present. Maybe from our childhood, we are recollecting something from our childhood. It need not be true. It need not be the real fact. It could be from our childhood, or maybe from our dream, or maybe from the books that we have read. But it all comes to our memory as truth. That is how memory is connected with the truth. And when you follow that idea of truth, you write poems. And that is exactly what is happening in the language of a poetry, language of, the poems of a a young poet. In her first book, we see actually the idea of truth. And this memory is really important. The dreams are really important. Thoughts are really important. And especially when we stand in the era of artificial intelligence, this idea of memory is really important because artificial intelligence cannot capture our memory. It's completely ours, it's personal. Thus, we are imperfect. Maybe if you ask an artificial intelligence, can you write a sonnet just like Shakespeare about Bangalore? It might be able to write a perfect sonnet. But in the era of artificial intelligence, I think we don't need that perfection. And now I think the idea of imperfection has much to do with art than the machine world. And I think that is exactly we are rebelling against, or like being imperfect is being human, being artistic. Love poems. And thus, I strongly believe that poetry is imperfect. Thus, truth is imperfect. Thus, memory is imperfect. And so is language. So I'm so happy to be here as a part of an imperfect book, which is completely human and like it has connected with humanity and our own thought, our own belief, and there is something called truth, which is really important. And this morning, I came to Bangalore this morning. I was traveling in a bus, and by around 5:30, 6 o'clock, I woke up and I was just seeing through the window and I saw a sunrise. And in the evening, I expected to see a sunset, but I couldn't because of the cloudy weather. And I think it's the duty of a poet. If there is a duty at all, we always have different opinions about the duty of a poet. But I think the duty as a poet is to heal. And that is how poetry become political. We are all like, poets are all like earthworms. We actually give what the earth lacks. People take what the earth has, and the earthworm actually, it nourishes the earth and it gives that nourishment back. Maybe in some like some plants does it. The roots of some plant does it, like give nitrogen and something back to the earth. I think poets are doing that. It's not about like speaking against the power or speaking against capitalism or speaking against certain political party. Poetry doesn't do that. Real poet won't do that. Like their duty is somewhere immersed. Actually, they are deep inside the soil or inside the clouds or inside the sky. It's in some other, their language works. Poetry has a language by its own. It is not Kannada or Malayalam or anything. It has a language by its own. I think this poet has that. And that is exactly what maybe she has published her first book. And this is a responsibility for her. Now she cannot escape from poetry. And that's, she's now in a trap actually. A trap of being a poet. And she cannot escape from it. And I think this is the burden that she has. It's not a simple burden. Actually, to take the sun with your hand, that's really important. That's what poet does. To take the sun, real sun, with your hand and give it to people. Without burning your hand. Because, no, to take the sun is really a tough thing. It's not an easy thing as like, it's not a romantic thing. We should be equipped with our reading, our travel, expand ourselves, expand our soul, our heart, and then you will be able to take the sun and give it to people. And I think that's exactly what poets do. I wanted to express my gratitude to her for inviting me here. At the same time, I wish her all the experience, both good and bad, not just good and bad experience in the world, and thereby she will be able to create beautiful things and give the real sun to her readers. I wish her all the best. Thank you.